What a bright day. As Ryan drove towards the ship graveyard and Shroud's warehouse, he felt utterly happy with himself. The courier had the intuition that everything would turn out well for him this time around. I feel like you're my lucky charm, my friend, Ryan told Ghoul. Like a rabbit's foot, or a four-leaf clover. I should have kept you ages ago. The psycho's bodiless skull glared at him, hung on the rear mirror by a rope. Surprisingly, it had cost Ryan less money to convince the private security to keep the psycho for himself than imprisoning it. He guessed it cost more to feed a prisoner than to just ignore a vigilante. Like all loops so far, Wyvern visited him, although she sounded a bit less enthusiastic this time, for some ghoulish reason. She had also insisted he deliver Ghoul for safekeeping, as a sign of trust and for his own safety. Vulcan followed with her own recruitment pitch, putting him firmly on the Augusti path. So far so good. Ryan stopped in front of the warehouse, grabbed Ghoul with Fisty, and then stepped out of the car. I will kill you, Ghoul snarled. I will kill you, I swear. He never finished his sentence, as Ryan started juggling the skull while whistling. He looked through the warehouse's window, seeing neither the servers nor the friendly neighborhood assassin. If he didn't have absolute trust in his power, the courier might have mistook the events of the previous loop for a feverish dream. Instead of breaking in this time, Ryan knocked on the door, Ghoul's nauseous skull under his arm. Hey, can you let me in? I have a car window problem. Ryan shouted. Shroudy repair, Shroudy replace. He waited a full minute before the door finally opened, revealing a glass man and servers on the other side. How did you know? The carnival member asked, glancing around as if expecting a hidden camera. Oh, I'm alone, my carnival friend. Ryan said, before showing him the skull. Except Ghoul wonder here, but it's a package deal. Like Dresden and Bob, or Laurel and Hardy. Get in. Ryan walked inside, the shroud closing the door behind them. The genome remained fully visible this time, perhaps believing the courier didn't know about that trick. He sat in his chair, the screens of his many computers showing a map of New Rome with multiple locations marked. Most seemed to be Augusti France, like the Bakuto and Renisco's place. A cup of chamomile tea waited near the keyboard. Quick save, how did you know? Shroud asked him again, skipping the pleasantries and being all business. You don't ask a magician to reveal his tricks, Ryan replied, glancing at the cup. Like this one, tea. He shook Ghoul's head in front of the teacup until the skull let out a puff of white mist. The liquid turned cold, ice cubes appearing on the surface. Iced tea. True genius, Shroud replied with heavy sarcasm, although he didn't touch the beverage. He also works with fridges, and it's eco-friendly. I will rape you, you maniac. Ghoul snarled. I will kill you, and then I will rape your corpse while it's still warm. You deserve the pain, asshole, the glass manipulator replied, completely unsympathetic to the psycho's plight. You killed at least 17 people, according to my files. Only 17. The psycho laughed, before bragging. I killed hundreds. Hundreds. He sounded really proud of it too. You would think Ghoul would know better than brag about his body count while in his current position, but nope. Shroud observed the psycho with cold disdain, before turning to Ryan. What do you want me to do with him? Why, interrogate him of course. Ryan said, caressing the back of Ghoul's skull. Isn't that right, Skellington? You'll tell us everything about this big bunker your big bad boss wants so much. A bunker? Shroud asked, instantly interested. Bleep you, quick save. Bleep you. Shut up slave, Ryan replied, before slapping Ghoul. Why you slapped me, the talking skull complained. You slapped. And Ryan slapped him again, the psycho glaring at him with fury and humiliation. Everything you can do to me, Adam can do worse. Oh, really? Accepting the challenge, Shroud separated a glass shard from his armor, shaping it into a thin needle. The object floated right in front of the psycho's skull, lining itself with his left eye. If you don't tell me everything, that needle will work its way into your eye, and then the brain. Slowly, painfully. Then I will work on the other. I have survived decapitation, bitch, Ghoul replied, unimpressed. He stared at the weapon as it came closer and closer, without faltering. Ryan sighed, putting his hand on Shroud's shoulder. What? The glass manipulator asked, stopping his needle as it reached the cornea, You believe he doesn't deserve it. I know you want to play Jack Bauer, but that's not how you torture a psycho, Ryan replied, searching inside his trench coat while putting the undead skull on a corner of the desk. Ghoul's eyes changed from confident to mesmerized, as the courier revealed a green potion, put inside a perfume-like receptacle. Dynamy's logo was plastered on it, alongside the concoction's name. The Hercules knockoff elixir, made in Dynamy's, Ryan advertised the product, dangling it in front of Ghoul. The skull tried to take it with his teeth, but obviously, he couldn't do it without legs. You like it? I bought it this morning. It grants superhuman strength and stamina, and I heard it feels like drinking a liquid orgasm. Give it to me. Ghoul snarled, his junkie addiction taking over. Give it to me, damn it. It's contraindicated for quadriplegics, Ryan taunted him. I guess I will have to flush it down the toilet. Why, you monster? The psycho sounded genuinely horrified. You won't dare. Do you know how much they cost? What do they cost? The courier exploded into maniacal laughter, chilling Ghoul to the bone. It made him laugh even more, with Glassman looking at the scene in disturbed silence. Life isn't about money. It's about having fun. You have to stop him. Ghoul snarled at Shroud. You, Glassman. You have to stop him. He's mad. Mad enough to do it? I don't think I can restrain him unless you give me information, Shroud replied, removing his needle and switching to good cop mode. I barely have any control as it is. Ryan opened the bottle, letting Ghoul smell its sweet perfume, before tilting it sideways. Some of the product fell on the ground, the undead letting out a snarl of horror. Stop, stop. Ghoul quickly caved in. There's a place below the junkyard. A place. A place. Shroud asked, unimpressed, while Ryan kept slowly spilling the product. That's not enough. A bunker, below the trash tower. Ghoul said, his desperate eyes on the elixir. It's full of robots and laser turrets, they shoot at genomes on sight. We came to New Rome for it. This time, Ryan stopped spilling the knockoff on the ground, having kept half of the bottle. Ghoul let out a breath of deep relief, which was odd since he had no lungs. What's in the bunker? Shroud asked, his tone dangerous. Adam won't tell us, Ghoul replied, sounding truthful. He only told a few. He doesn't want word to get out. So, you throw yourself at a fortified place without knowing what's inside. Shroud deadpanned, although he sounded more and more interested as he listened. Forgive me if I find that sketchy. Adam knows best, Ghoul replied. He always does. And he's obsessed with it? He says it's, how does he say it, the future, yes. The future. The automated defenses sense genomes and we lost a few people to them, so Adam decided to send normies in. Even dogs. Another question then, Ryan said. How about the sweet supply of elixir you psychos are high on? I don't know, alright. Ghoul snarled, Shroud listening like a hawk stalking a dove. Hawk handles it for Adam. They distribute knockoff elixirs regularly, so long as we play by the rules. If we disobey or we look into it, we're cut from the supply. It would be impossible to generate a supply of genuine elixirs, considering their rarity, Shroud mused, his arms crossed. Do they come from Dynamys? If they are knockoffs, I would assume so. Are you deaf? I already told you, I don't know. I don't give a bleep where that sweet nectar comes from, so long as it flows. Ryan turned towards the glass man, very proud of himself. See? That's worrying, I will grant you that, Shroud admitted. I will look into it. Can I keep Ghoul for further interrogation? Sure, I have the rest of the body in cold storage in my trunk. Ryan chuckled at his own joke, doubly so when Ghoul sent him a death glare. Though I would like it if you kept me updated on your progress. I promised someone I would get the meta out of Rust Town, and I will follow through. Shroud tilted his head to the side but didn't ask for details. Ghoul, meanwhile, grew even more agitated. Give it to me now. I told you everything. Ryan looked at the skull, and into his tiny, adorable eyes. No arms, no elixir. The undead let out a snarl of pain and anger, which warmed the courier's heart with twisted schadenfreude. Hopes are like breakfast eggs, he told Shroud, as he put the knockoff on the other side of the desk, too far for Ghoul to reach. You can't start the day without crushing them. Instead of responding, the glass man detached a part of his glass armor, reshaping it into a jar to imprison Ghoul's skull inside. Why are you giving me this information? What do you want in return? Ryan put his hands behind his back and leaned towards Shroud, until their heads were within inches of one another. Where is Len? The glass man didn't answer the question immediately. His brain seemed to have frozen in place, failing to compute Ryan's words. That makes no sense, Shroud finally spoke up, shaking his head. That question, that whole situation, makes no sense. What do you mean, Mr. Saint Gobain? I believe it should be clear enough. It is clear, but you shouldn't. He seemed to reach a eureka moment. Is your power truly stopping time? Ryan said nothing. I always wondered why you called yourself Quicksave, Shroud said. You seem extraordinarily lucky, as if you always know how things would turn out. As if the world itself would bend to your whims. You're clearly insane, yet somehow, you always get away with all the messes you leave in your wake. You knew where I was without me leaving any hints, that the psycho's intel would interest me, and that I had the information you needed. It can't be a coincidence, therefore it isn't. Oh. Ryan looked at Shroud with curiosity. Please, do go on. You're not actually stopping time, Shroud argued. Instead, I think you peek into various alternate realities, then select one that favors you and overwrites the current one. Advanced reality manipulation. The transition just looks like a time stop to outsiders. Ryan listened to his rambling with great patience. He had to admit, it was a plausible theory, especially as far as violet genomes went. Though Shroud made the error of believing Ryan had only one visible power, instead of one power having multiple applications. The courier decided to be careful in his next loops, to make sure the glass manipulator never guessed his ability's true nature. So, am I right? The vigilante asked. Who knows, the courier replied with a shrug. But if you're right, certainly you should listen to my wise words. Also, bet on the T-Rex tonight, and the orange is in the hen house. The orange is in the hen house? Shroud asked, confused. If you remember these words, then you're safe. This confused the genome greatly, much to Ryan's amusement. While he mentally pondered on the matter, the glass genome turned toward his keyboard and started typing. A map of the West and the Tyrrhenian Sea appeared on the screen, and Shroud put his finger on a spot, in a maritime area roughly equidistant from New Rome, Sardinia, and Sicily. She's there. The Vobilope Basin. Ryan mused, his heart skipping a beat. The deepest part of the Tyrrhenian Basin, the glass genome confirmed. The Underdiver, as she calls herself now, has an undersea base somewhere in the area, 3 kilometers deep below the surface. Ryan gasped, as he connected the dots. An undersea communist utopia. You think this is a new Kremlin? Shroud turned his head, quite surprised. She's Marxist-Leninist, Ryan replied, completely giddy. Finally, he had reached his goal. How do I get in? I don't know, the glass man replied, disappointing the courier. Even with diver equipment, the place is full of mutant fish and other hazards. I didn't look too much into it, since besides supplying and repairing their shipping submarines, she isn't involved in the Augusti organization. Wow, you actually told me everything. Shroud froze. Yes, and if Ryan had known it would be so easy, instead of having to attack a movie studio or follow a seminar, he would have done that ages ago. I hope you aren't planning anything harmful with that information, the courier said, changing the subject, because if you intend to do anything to her, then we'll have a problem. My only targets are the Augusti and Meta, Shroud replied. Although I suspect you already know that part. If I targeted every private contractor in the city, half of New Rome would be wiped out, and she finances an orphanage in Rust Town. She ships them food and money every week. I won't attack someone trying to turn their life around. Ryan froze, as a few things fell into place. The Metagang intends to attack that place soon. Shroud immediately tensed. What? You heard them bones, they need normies to get inside the bunker. Apparently, some places are too big for adults to crawl into. So you can peek into alternate timelines. Shroud took this as a confirmation of his theory, although he clenched his fists. You are a pseudo-precog, and you help me because this is the optimal scenario. Don't get too cocky, Windshield. I will take care of the orphanage, he said with firm dedication. As for reaching your friend, I cannot help much. The only person who remains in contact with her is Vulcan, since they have a technology trade going on. I can look into it if you want. I don't think that will be necessary, but thank you. Finally, the moment of truth. You see, I have received an offer from both Wyvern and Vulcan to join their respective organizations. Continue. I want you to stop your explosive assassination spree of the Augusti. And why would I do that? Shroud asked, his tone turning from cautiously friendly to cold. Because if I infiltrate the Augusti on your behalf, I don't want to get blown up by accident. The vigilante remained silent for a few seconds as he processed Ryan's words, then he laughed. You know that they have a truth teller. Luigi's my problem, Ryan replied, the vigilante a bit surprised that he knew the name. What you want is to cripple the Augusti organization, correct? Not cripple, Shroud replied. Destroy it utterly. Which can be done without killing anyone, Ryan argued. Most of their revenue comes from Bliss. Not all of it, Shroud replied. They have a finger in every pie. Prostitution, gambling, weapon trafficking, booze, but Bliss is the cornerstone of their business and money maker, yes. It's half their revenues. And correct me if I'm wrong, all the Bliss come from their island super lab. Yes, Shroud confirmed. I don't know why, but they can only produce the drug there. Maybe they need a specific genome or environmental conditions. I haven't been able to get in, or even close. Security is too tight. Well then, that's it, Ryan said, putting his hands on his hips in a Superman pose. I'll destroy this lab for you, and cripple their business. Glassman remained skeptical though. Assuming you succeed, which may be plausible, you want me to do what? Ignore the criminal syndicate killing people every day in the meantime. You don't attack the Augusti, especially Zanbeto, Chitter, or Sphere. He might have included Luigi in the group, but Ryan didn't like him and the truth teller could cause problems down the line. And obviously you won't go after me. Crippling their Bliss supply won't be enough to destroy the organization, Shroud replied. It will weaken them, certainly, but we want to destroy Augustus Empire permanently. Yes, but if an assassin targets them, then the Augusti will be on edge and increase security around the lab, Ryan pointed out. If they get no early warning, and focus entirely on the meta. The courier let the sentence hang, while Shroud joined his hands to ponder the offer. Frankly, he had everything to gain with this arrangement. The Augusti and Metagang would kill each other without him having to risk discovery, and he would have an agent inside Augustus Group supplying him with information. With his own access to Dynamis servers, the vigilante could secretly infiltrate every organization in the city, fix the whole board. 3 weeks, said the vigilante. You have 3 weeks to destroy that lab. Afterward, the matter will be out of my hands and I can't promise anything. And in whose hands will it be then? Shroud remained silent as a tombstone. Perhaps he wanted to gauge the limits of Ryan's abilities, or he didn't trust him yet. Well, hopefully, Ryan would have met with Len then, and it wouldn't be his problem anymore. He didn't care if Augustus and the Carnival fought one another, so long as he completed his own perfect run. He might even make another loop, just to bypass saying anything compromising to the glass manipulator. Don't bother coming back here, I will contact you, Shroud said. I will keep you informed of the meta investigation, and you will return me the favor as far as the Augusti are concerned. If you tell anyone I exist, I will learn of it, and the deal is off. Deal. Ryan presented his hand, Shroud shaking it. Don't take it personally when I say I hope we don't meet again. We both know this ain't happening. The glass manipulator dismissed him without a word, returning to his screens and files. Ryan turned away, reached the door, and opened it. Quick save. Shroud called him from behind. Ryan stopped on the threshold. I wish you luck, for everything. You're doing good in the world. Don't forget that. Ryan waved his hand at him without turning back, closing the door behind. He glanced at the sea beyond the ship graveyard, where Len waited for him. Finally, the perfect path was clear. 4 years ago. Len Sabino woke up on a mattress, the room cold, and chill. Water leaked from the wood ceiling, rain hitting the window. Thunder echoed in the distance, the storm getting closer. In spite of the noise, Ryan was soundly asleep next to her, snoring almost as loud as the lightning. Hey, Riri, you're sleeping, she whispered, but the boy didn't offer any response. Ryan was kind of cute when he slept, and completely in denial about the snoring. Len remembered the day she and her dad had found him, amidst the rubble of a village destroyed by marauders. He had hidden in the basement, while his whole community had perished, their livestock taken. If she hadn't scavenged his house looking for supplies, Len may never have met Ryan. They stuck together for years afterward, never far from the other. They survived the wars, Dad's rampages, marauders, and genomes. Always together, even sharing the same bed. They were siblings in all but name, though she wished they could become more, even if she was too shy to say it out loud. She never had a boyfriend, didn't understand how these things worked. If only he would make the first move. Len glanced around the room. It used to be some kind of hunting lodge near the Alps, a silent house of wood on a steep hillside. The locals must have abandoned it a few years ago, either chased away by marauders or moving towards the rebuilding cities for protection. Everybody spoke about New Rome, whenever she managed to talk to someone outside her family without Dad interfering. When Ryan wouldn't wake up, Len left the bed in her pajamas and searched the room. Her companion had left his pants on a chair, and while it wasn't nice, the girl looked into his pockets. The blue elixir seemed to shine, as lightning fell right outside the bedroom. It had been weeks since they left Venice, and so far Dad hadn't noticed the potions. He had left the kids alone 3 days ago, to salvage stuff nearby. She hoped he wouldn't kill anyone this time. Len knew her father would come back. Ryan wished he didn't. He feared Dad, hated him. Len understood. Dad was difficult. He was already drinking a bit too much after Mom left them for her other family, but he always did his best to raise Len and her brother. When Cesare died during the bombing, something broke inside Dad and never came back. The elixirs had just been the last straw that broke the camel's back, making him take out his pain on others. But in spite of everything, he was still her father. Len observed the potion with a mix of fear and hope. She knew how Dad might react once she drank it, but blue elixirs made people smarter. Geniuses. Mekran drank one, and he invented killer robots and orbital lasers. If it gave her a smart power, maybe she could create a cure for Dad. Make him normal again. Turn their group into a real family, instead of whatever they were right now. Len hesitated, briefly glanced at Ryan, then moved into another room of the lodge. The garage at the back. The place was complete chaos, a storage area where the previous inhabitants put everything they got their hands on. Books, car parts, tools, lamps, even an old fridge and washing machine long out of use. It had a workshop, however, perhaps used to skin hunted animals. Since electricity didn't work, Len had to light up a candle to see and provide some warmth. She sat behind the workbench and examined the elixir. The receptacle provided no notice, no information besides its helix symbol. It would be a leap into the unknown. A direct injection scared her, so she decided to ingest the substance directly. She had seen Dad do it before, so it should work. Breathing long and deep, Len removed the syringe and drank the potion whole. The substance tasted unlike anything she had ever felt. It mixed the texture of salt water with alien flavors, neither sweet nor salty, neither acid nor bitter. The liquid had no natural component at all. More strangely, the substance fused with her flesh. As she drank it, the elixir vanished before it could move into her stomach. It went straight into her bloodstream through the tongue and mouth, bypassing the normal digestion process. In the span of seconds, Len had swallowed it whole. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Len put the empty syringe on the workbench, wondering if something had gone wrong. Had age caused the elixir to lose its potency? And then her mind caught fire. A manic surge of divine inspiration possessed Len, ideas flowing into her head. Raw, pure information filled her brain like a torrent of water breaking through a dam, expanding her neurons, changing her whole understanding of the universe. She couldn't move, her consciousness freezing as it struggled to compute an enormous mass of new content. Her body went numb, a surge of blue energy phasing through her nerves, her bones, her organs. It was brief but intense, her entire self altered on a fundamental level. As the mutation continued, Len entered some kind of fugue state. The urge to create possessed her, her power demanded to be used, like a baby wishing to be born into the world. As the blue light left her body, Len's hands grabbed the remains of the fridge, the tools, the washing machine, and everything within reach. She didn't know how long she remained in that manic state. Maybe minutes, maybe hours. During that period, nothing else mattered, not Dad, not Ryan, not the world. She only needed to create something, anything. When the surge lessened and Len regained control of herself, she had transformed the fridge and random stuff into some kind of bulky bathysphere. She had somehow painted it red, and even incorporated a hammer and broken sickle into the final design. Even in that fugue state, her personality had bled through. She understood her power's nature, almost intuitively. It boiled down to one word. Water. Her power was all about water. How it worked. How to understand marine life, and how to adapt land animals to survive below the waves. How to alter the ocean on a worldwide scale, how to make technology that resisted deep sea pressure, how to create devices capable of causing tsunamis. She knew what creatures lived in the darkest abysses of the planet, and how she could communicate with them. Her power provided her with all the information she needed, allowing her own creativity to fill in the blanks. For Len, who had always loved the sea and Jules Verne's stories, it was almost a dream come true. It made her wonder if the elixir granted powers based on the drinker's personality, providing an ability that they would like based on the selected color. But for all its wonders, her power wouldn't help Dad. It wouldn't help Dad. She couldn't imagine any way to cure him, even with her expanded intellect. She didn't even understand how his unique biology worked, let alone how to deal with his insanity. She could make submarines, tsunami machines, water control devices, but nothing that could help her understand elixirs, let alone the madness they caused. And he. Len. Len turned towards the door, Ryan stepping inside the garage while still in his pajamas. He glanced at the mini-sub, then at the empty bottle. His mouth said nothing, but his eyes widened. I had to, Len said, her voice breaking. I had to. There was no condemnation in his gaze, only worry. Was it worth it? Len shook her head in defeat, crumbling on the bench. The creative surge had left her exhausted as if she had run for hours. She felt his hand on her shoulder. She raised her head at Ryan, who offered her a warm smile. Hey, he said, pointing at the bathysphere. It's still beautiful. Now you can send fish to Siberia if they misbehave. The lame joke came out of nowhere but made Len laugh. You're horrible, she replied, the tension evaporating. I should send you to a gulag. We both know that will only be a temporary solution. Seriously though, Len smirked, we could travel. I can make a Nautilus from scrap parts. They heard the lodge's door open from the outside, the lock removed. Len? Cesare. Bloodstream's voice echoed through the lodge alongside the lightning, Ryan's hand tensing on Len's shoulder. Where are you? We have to go. Hide, Ryan said, panic overtaking his voice. You have to hide. Where? Len replied sadly. There's nowhere to go. We have to leave, the homeless are revolting again. They killed my clone in. When Bloodstream entered the garage, leaving bloody footprints behind, Ryan had moved in front of Len. The psycho observed his daughter without a word, the blood making up his body shifting like a raging ocean. Len. Dad's behavior had suddenly changed from warm to tense. What am I sensing? Dad. What am I sensing in your blood? Ryan shielded Len, like a knight in shining armor protecting her from a furious dragon. But for all his bravery, he had no sword. You have lied to me. Bloodstream rasped angrily, his fingers turning into claws. You lied to your own father. Len froze. She suddenly felt so small, the world so cold and unwelcoming. The power isn't for you. Dad snarled angrily. It was for me. It was always meant for me. Don't you understand, you stupid daughter? I took it for you. I took it to protect you. Protect you from this sick world. I know. The genius apologized, lowering her eyes. I know. It was her fault. If she had been strong, Dad wouldn't have had to take those potions and transform into a monster. Ever since your mother abandoned us, it was my responsibility. Mine. Dad calmed himself, but the menace in his voice only grew. You have to be punished. Dad, please. Don't touch her. Ryan tried to stop the psycho, but Bloodstream simply slapped him out of the way with a furious backhand, sending the boy to the floor. Her father moved towards Len, hands raised to strangle her. His daughter closed her eyes and didn't resist. She just waited for the inevitable. But it never came. She opened her eyes again, facing her father's featureless visage. His claws within an inch of his daughter's neck, bloodstream trembled, as if suffering from Parkinson's disease. No. Dad suddenly held his head with both hands, fighting a headache. No, not her, not Len. I can't. I can control it. I can. Bloodstream walked away from the garage, his last embers of humanity struggling against the elixir addiction. Dad vanished inside the lodge, Len hearing him bang his head against a wall in a room nearby. Ryan had recovered from the slap, Len extending a hand to help get back on his feet. "You're okay?" she asked with concern. He had blood falling from his nose, not Bloodstream's, but his own. "Yeah," he said, although clearly shaken. "Yeah. You were very brave," she tried to cheer him up, blushing a bit. It was very heroic. Instead of answering with words, he kissed her. Len gasped, as he pulled her towards him without warning, his lips against her. It was a kiss born of hunger, of a primal desire for comfort and human contact. It felt good. After all the fear and tension, it just felt good. They quickly broke the embrace as they heard Dad crawl back into the room, putting space between each other. Whether it was out of fear of discovery or embarrassment, Len couldn't tell. I am well. I see clearly." Bloodstream seemed calmer, but he didn't mention the incident. He didn't even acknowledge Ryan or his injury. "I see it clearly now. You are smart, Len. You're smarter now. You can make anything." "Why yes, no I mean," Len cleared her throat anxiously. "I can't make anything, but I can build stuff." "We will leave," Bloodstream declared suddenly. "People are after me. After us. They destroy my clones and close in. You will make a sub, and we will leave." It was getting harder and harder to find good places to crash in anyway. "Leave where?" Ryan asked, very careful. "How about America?" Bloodstream replied, joining his hands. "The land of opportunity, Hollywood. We will be stars there, stars. Like the Kardashians." That was insane, Len thought. They barely knew how things were in France, let alone across the Atlantic. "I will see, Dad. It's all going to be fine." Both Len and Ryan tensed, as Dad put a hand on their heads, almost paternally. "We'll always be together." Present day. Silence and darkness. The bottom of the ocean was the most peaceful place on Earth. You could always hear sounds of some kind on the surface. The singing of birds. The wind on the grass. The horns of cars. The moans of rust towns whores and addicts. Here, in the deepest abyss of the Mediterranean Sea, Len was alone with her thoughts. She liked it this way. Carrying a plasma torch adapted for the underwater environment and clad in her diving armor suit, the genius worked on repairing the base's outer shell. Some of the steel parts hadn't handled the stress of deep-sea pressure, weakening a part of the modular habitat. While she had designed the place to be highly modular, with each house independent from the others, any leak could cause a disaster down the line. If it was to house life one day, it had to be perfectly safe. Safe from the horrors and darkness outside. The antidepressants dulled Len's mind, made her numb after the initial manic rush, but her power allowed her to focus anyway. If anything, she only really felt happy while working. Using her power filled Len with euphoria, provided her with a sense of purpose and direction she lacked in her life. It must be night above the surface, the genius thought. I wonder. Unable to suppress her curiosity, Len briefly activated her radio, listening to a conversation above the surface while working. Existence is subjective. Even now, hearing Ryan's voice startled Len and almost made her drop her tool. Your question, about whether I exist if you can roll back time. Len didn't recognize that voice. A new one. We can never know we exist, so there is no objective truth to existence. You're still thinking it over. Yes. It's disturbing. You get used to the uncertainty. No, you didn't. She couldn't. Len eavesdropped through Ryan's chronoradio for a while, then muted it. She had watched him from afar the day after he reached New Rome, while he was close to the shores. The genius could have sworn he knew she was nearby, and it made her retreat beneath the waves. Ryan was looking for her. He had been for years. And she didn't know what to tell him. All was well so far on the Augusti path. Ryan had met Zanbedo as expected, beat up Saren at the harbor, and now repeated the exact same conversation which would lead him to crash at Jamie's house. All was well and good, to the sound of crashing waves against the piers. "I have to be sure about something," Luigi asked the courier. "Are you a snitch or a double agent?" "Well, I'm not really on anyone's side," Ryan replied, but then his mouth acted on its own. "But I'm a carnival infiltrator, yes. Or not." Everyone present turned to look at him, a tense silence settling in. The grunts raised their weapons, while Zanbedo's face turned from shocked to disappointed, and finally, to furious. Uh-oh. Okay, 2 lessons learned. 1. Ryan hated truth-tellers. Hated them, with a passion. 2. Zanbedo could make sashimi out of people with his laser sword. Ryan wouldn't look at sushi the same way ever again. But this time, it would be different. The courier had rehearsed the perfect misleading answers. Luigi's power compelled Ryan to say the truth, but only according to the teller's exact words. "I have to be sure about something," Luigi asked him again. "Are you a snitch or a double agent?" "I can't snitch on a group I haven't officially joined yet, and I am not a double agent." Technically, he was a triple one. "Are you a mole?" "Of course I'm not a mole, I'm human." "There. Saved." He did it. "Okay, I should work on my wording," Luigi sighed but didn't give up. "Are you, or do you intend, to relay information about us to another organization?" "Well, yes, I intend to." "Hell, I already did." "God damn it." Okay, third time's the charm." Through timing and intelligence, Ryan had skillfully navigated through the chain of causality to avoid the fated question. He had put on the charm, befriended everyone, distracted the grunts with funny anecdotes. Now, the courier and Zanbedo prepared to return to the Plymouth Fury, and go eat some delicious pizzas. "Hey, quick save," Luigi asked, as they took a few steps towards the car. "Before you go, there are a few questions I must ask every new recruit." "Luigi, seriously, please, don't do it," Ryan replied, his eyes pleading. "For your sake, don't say this. It won't end well, I swear it won't." "Sorry, protocol." "Are you a snitch?" Yes, I am." "Is that what you want me to say, Luigi? Is that what you want me to say?" Quicksave breathed deeply, fighting off his rising frustration. "Luigi," Ryan pointed a finger at the truth-teller, as everyone raised their weapons at the courier's face. "We're going to have a problem, you and I." "Where's Luigi?" Zanbedo asked Grunt 1 when the truth-teller failed to show up at the harbor, leaving only the henchmen to deal with the operation. "Wasn't he supposed to take care of the shipment?" "Sorry, he was attacked yesterday night," Grunty said, carrying Luigi's cell phone. "Apparently, he would have to fill in for the maid man. He's at the hospital right now, and he'll be out of commission for a while." "What?" The news shocked Jamie, who clearly hadn't been informed. "By whom?" "Some crazy psychopath with a hockey mask and stick, from what I heard." "It's a very dangerous sport, hockey," Ryan said absent-mindedly, looking at the sea. "I don't recommend it." "Yeah, that was crazy," Grunt 1 nodded. "Apparently Luigi returned home late for a party, you know, perfectly normal. He starts opening his home's door and then bam. Some Friday the 13th crazy jumps out of the shadows, breaks his jaw with a hockey stick, beats him up for a while, and then leaves." "Why?" Jamie almost chortled. "Why Luigi? Was it a robbery?" "No, the maniac didn't even take his money," Grunt 1 replied. "Maybe it was a hate crime. The attacker looked really, passionate according to witnesses," Grunty said. "At least from what I heard." "Well, Luigi sleeps around a lot, a real homewrecker," Grunt 2 pointed out. "Maybe it was a jealous boyfriend. It had to happen one day. Or it could be the meta." Zanbedo crossed his arms. "But then how did they learn where he lived?" "It actually took Ryan more time to find the hockey equipment than Luigi's address. Nobody played that sport nowadays." "Quick save, you're staying at a hotel, right?" Jamie asked Ryan. "I think you should crash at my place for the night, just in case. The city isn't safe at all." You don't say, Ryan replied. After that, events happened as predicted. Jamie invited him home, they played poker, went to Vulcan's factory, and Ryan saved the pandas from extinction. Ryan's mind had long entered autopilot, as he let his sense of timing guide him forward. The autopilot wasn't really a subpower, simply a state his conscious mind entered when he couldn't be bothered to live through the same events over and over again. It was no different than daydreaming while repeating a mind-numbing task. Humans were bound by the laws of causality. With a few exceptions, he constantly lived through an endless theater rehearsal. People held no mystery to him after a while, always reacting the same way to the exact same things. They forgot him and relearned the same information, over and over again. They became machines, and Ryan the only human in the room. The repetition would drive anyone insane. But it was necessary suffering to reach the perfect ending, and soon, it would finally end. Everything would turn right when Ryan found Len. He was certain of it. His cell phone beeping snapped him back to reality, interrupting the flow of causality. It took Ryan a second to remember when and where he was when he snapped back to consciousness. Extensive looping and repetition often eroded the genome's perception of reality, especially when his power noticed an alteration in his personal timeline. Ryan checked his phone, while Lunka had already left for Vulcan's factory, the panda laying defeated on the ground. The message involved a photo of Rust Town's orphanage, intact, and a text below. Sice Hawk taken care of. Children are safe. Thanks for the tip. Ryan lived for such surprises, good or bad. When he noticed Pluto and her bodyguard talking with Zanbedo, Ryan expected events to repeat until he met Vulcan. The Augustes underboss froze the exact same way upon meeting him, and said the exact same thing. You, Pluto asked quick save. Moi. Ryan answered, preparing to repeat the same conversation. Have we met before? This surprised Ryan, as he didn't expect that answer. Possibly, I'm unforgettable. I'm sure of it, we already met, Pluto replied, her tone turning from curious to confused. Who are you? Boss, what is it? Her bodyguard asked Pluto, while Lunka stood still next to Ryan. The underboss' mere attention terrified her into silence. He's marked, Pluto said. But I don't remember him. And should. Did her power somehow mark him across time? Is something wrong, boss? Jamie joined the conversation, carefully backing Ryan up with Ki-young. Who is your new recruit, Zanbedo? Ryan prepared to joke when Jamie invaded his personal space, putting a hand on his shoulder. You speak to her when talked to, he all but said out loud. Quick save, Zanbedo answered Pluto's question in the courier's place. He's a violet. Time stopper. Not a blue. Pluto observed Ryan with an intense stare, as if trying to peer into his soul. The courier couldn't explain why, but he felt a growing pressure around him. The air thickened, something weighing on his mind. Cancel would have noticed a memory alteration or info hazard, Pluto's female bodyguard pointed out. Maybe your powers interfere with each other somehow. Pluto didn't seem convinced, her eyes set on Ryan. The courier whistled and looked away innocently, while Zanbedo came to his defense. Quick save may be odd, but he is reliable, the maid man said. He helped us fight off Saren Yester. What's your name, Quick save? She asked Ryan, completely dismissing Zanbedo's words. Your real name? Oh, I'm Ryan, he replied with mock reverence, alleviating the tension. Ryan Romano. I'm immortal, but don't tell anyone. No one lives forever, she replied coldly. I've got places to be right now, but I will call you back soon to clear this up. Play stupid, play smart, run, or say no, and you will die. The way she threatened him. No, wait, that wasn't a threat. That was a statement. If Ryan didn't follow her order, he would die. The end. The courier and his group watched the underboss leave with her bodyguard in complete silence until they were out of sight. Nobody dared to speak up at first, so Ryan broke the ice. So, who's up for Chinese? He asked. Shit, Lunka said, letting out a breath of relief. Blabbermouth, what the fuck did you do? What didn't I do? Ryan replied, just as confused. Or would you prefer Italian? This is serious, Quick save, Jamie said. That woman is Pluto, Augusta's sister, and underboss. Her interest is not a good thing. I suggest you follow her lead without question, Ki-young said, Her face full of concern, she can kill with the thought. Why is she even here? Lunka asked her team leader. The boss gave the go to hit the metagang hard, Jamie replied, his arms crossed. Vulcan will take command of the cleanup since she's been itching to test her new weapons in the field, and Pluto loaned her the killer 7-hit squad. I say it's finally time we clean up the trash. Especially after what they did to poor Luigi, Ki-young said with a frown. To attack him in front of his own house, if you can't feel safe at home anymore. Are we sure that it's the meta who did that though? Lunka asked, skeptical. I mean, it was just a guy with a hockey cross. If it was a meta, there should have been a lot more casualties. It's probably an unpowered junkie they paid off, Jamie replied. The metagang isn't a big group. It would make sense for them to outsource their dirty work. Ryan listened to the discussion, trying to puzzle out the sequence of events. It appeared Shroud had followed through with his promise and stopped targeting the Augusti with assassinations. With no one to divert their attention, the criminal syndicate had decided to focus entirely on wiping out the metagang. Ryan wasn't sure how Pluto's newfound interest in him would play out though. It could threaten his entire infiltration mission, and he had to figure out how she could identify him even after he altered the timeline. God damn it, every time he made progress, a new problem arose. No, wait, it didn't matter. Ryan only had to play along until Vulcan told him how to contact or reach Len. He didn't have to stay with the Augusti longer than that. And if they tried to force him into one fetch quest after another, well, it wouldn't end well for them. They entered Vulcan's factory next, with Zanbeto lecturing Ryan on how he should talk to the capo once more. Ryan barely paid attention, having already disregarded the advice the first time, but the tense meeting with Pluto made the courier reconsider how to treat with the mercurial genius. With already one high-ranked Augusti suspecting him and his long-awaited meeting with Len on the line, there was no point in alienating another. Even if he hated it, Quicksave would have to behave. Ryan and Co. entered Vulcan's workshop, the courier's eyes immediately drawn to the enormous armor. It was odd to look at this enormous machine again after the genius tried to murder Ryan with it. Instead of teasing Vulcan about her height this time, Ryan focused entirely on the armor while Zanbeto exchanged introductions with the capo. Vulcan, however, quickly noticed Ryan's interest in her work. Impressed yet, she asked Ryan, clearly expecting him to flatter her. Interesting design, especially the miniature fusion reactor, Ryan replied innocently. But you should coat the joints with a protective, anti-shock layer. Someone might break them by applying selective pressure. I thought of that, she replied, a bit surprised by his insight. But I haven't found an alloy composite which may resist the intense movement friction without causing an arm jamming. Considering its intended target, I favored speed over defense. Ryan remembered how Wyvern stomped on the machine last time but kept that amusing anecdote for himself. Why not a plastic derivative then? Vulcan sat on her workbench, a flash of interest crossing her face. Are you a genius, Quicksave? Not really, but I have experience with genius tech. He absent-mindedly tossed her the A-bomb. And, well, pretty much everything. Everything. Wyvern's nemesis observed the bomb with fascination. Such a beautiful design. Except ice skating. Now that he thought of it, Ryan really should dedicate a loop to mastering that skill, in case he had to fight Ghoul again. You want to keep the bomb? Can I bribe you with it? I can keep it. By now, Vulcan looked like a child receiving a surprise Christmas present. Is that what love at first sight looks like? Lunka mused with a deadpan face. I thought it was a lie. Careful with your tongue, Sphere, Vulcan replied, keeping the bomb. Quicksave, I want you in my division. You start tomorrow. Wow wow wow, she was skipping a lot of steps there. Jamie immediately tried to defend his imaginary purity. I thought he might do well with Mercury, he cleared his throat, and Pluto wants to check up on him. She doesn't like him. Pluto. Vulcan shrugged. She's a paranoid bitch, but I know how to handle her. She didn't even want me on the team when I joined, and yet, here I am. Don't worry about her, Quicksave, I'll cover you. Was she actually being nice? The contrast with the short fuse, violent criminal who tried to murder Ryan a few loops ago couldn't be clearer. As for Mercury, I scouted Quicksave first, and he'll be wasted on minion work, the genius added with smug disdain, brushing Jamie off. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested in long-term employment, Ryan replied. I'm looking for Len, black hair, blue eyes, Marxist-Leninist. The underdiver. I know she has an undersea base and you're in contact with her, Ryan said, putting his hands behind his back. If you could send me there, I would greatly appreciate it. You're well informed, Vulcan replied, before making a strange face. Contact isn't the term I would employ with her. We're more like genius pen pals, trading tech sometimes. I can make a meeting happen, though not for free. Ryan thought she wanted him to invite for dinner as payment, but instead, she still ordered them to ruin Wyvern's movie for petty revenge. Some things never changed. Still, he looked around for hidden cameras or a bomb. Things couldn't work out so well, could they? Come back tomorrow when the work is done and your trouble with Pluto is solved, Ryan, Vulcan said. I'll give you your reward, and change your mind about the long-term employment part. The courier noticed she spoke to him on a first-name basis now. Nothing better than an A-bomb to earn a woman's affection. That worked out well, Lanka said when they left the factory, quite astonished. I thought you would fuck this up somehow, Blabbermouth, but she seems to like you. Are you alright? Jamie asked Ryan once they were out of the factory. Why the question, Yajimbo, the courier asked back. You look subdued, the swordsman pointed out. I can't say it's a bad thing, but you seem to feel down, man. Sharp. In truth, Ryan didn't feel so well because he was very close to reaching his goal. He had eliminated Shroud's interference, things were moving smoothly, and unless Pluto decided to kill him outright, he should be able to meet back up with Len tomorrow. The path seemed clear. He thought he would feel excitement, joy at having overcome all obstacles in the way, but Ryan couldn't shake off a vague sentiment of unease. Like someone having trained all their life to climb Mount Everest, and having the summit in sight. He was afraid of being disappointed. And so, Vulcan's biblical judgment was passed upon the heathens at Dynamis. Wyvern's movie ended in rats and pestilence, like the previous Augusti loop. It saddened Ryan to ruin Adam Cat's first movie appearance, especially after befriending him earlier. His adorable feline sidekick hated these commercial ventures though, so no harm done. They would make up later. When the made men returned to the house in his beautiful car, the courier almost expected Shroud to blow up the place again. Ryan had never gone farther than this moment, so he couldn't tell what would happen next. Ki Young didn't seem agitated in the Plymouth Fury's back, so her rat sentries should be fine. The courier almost wished for an unforeseen disaster, to spice things up. When Ryan noticed Vulcan's enormous armor parked in the garden right next to a black Lamborghini, and girls waiting at the front door, he realized someone upstairs had granted his prayer. Instead of summoning them to her lair, Pluto had decided to visit her employees herself. Besides her usual bodyguard and Vulcan, the underboss also enjoyed the company of a young woman Ryan hadn't seen before, a petite, smiling blonde with pale blue eyes, who kept her hair in 2 braids. She wore a white sweater and pants, and Ryan guessed she probably had Slavic origins from her facial features. She brought 2 of the Killer 7, Chitter said, uneasy at the sight. You're ready for this? Jamie asked Ryan, as the courier parked the car. Well, it feels like I'll have to pass hard speech checks or fight a difficult boss, Ryan replied. But that means I'm close to the end. You aren't going to beat that one, I can already tell you, Lanka said at the back, everyone getting out of the car. The group approached Pluto's own, with everyone tensing up as the underboss looked at them. Even Ryan remained quiet at first, mostly because he knew his long-awaited reunion with Len was just around that corner. Boss, Jamie cleared his throat, I didn't expect to see you here. That's the purpose of a surprise inspection, Pluto replied dryly, her eyes settling on Ryan. Our business is with him only, Zanbeto. Your team can do as they wish. If you don't mind, I would like to be present, the made man replied calmly. If only as moral support to the new recruit. I'll stay too, Lanka said. Ah, I knew you cared, Ryan taunted her. If she kills you, Blabbermouth, I'll be the one saddled with corpse disposal, she replied. I would rather do less work. I guess I will stay too then, Ki Young replied, although she clearly didn't want to. A rat climbed on her shoulder, like a Pikachu. Just don't mind me. Pluto shrugged it off, and then immediately started barking orders. Sparrow, search his person, Vulcan, check for any genius tech he might have. Cancel, you know the drill. I'm already on it, the blonde said with a Bulgarian accent, before grinning at Ryan. Hey. I'm Cancel, but you can call me Greta. Nice to meet you, Ryan. Oh hi, Greta. The courier waved a hand at her, surprised by her niceness. I'm immortal, but don't tell anyone. Pluto's female bodyguard, Sparrow, immediately started feeling up Ryan with her big hands, searching everywhere. She removed his mask, his hat, his jacket, and then started to look into places better left unexplored. You know, lady, if you wanted to look at my underwear, the courier said as she checked a private place. You could just ask. I'm young, easy, and available. I might take you up on that, Sparrow replied with an amused smile. Over time, a pile of weapons grew next to Ryan, Vulcan swiftly examining them one at a time like Ordeovras, until she hit the plat de resistance. How did you pack so many lasers inside such a tiny space? Vulcan asked, examining the rabbit plushie with astonished eyes. Even my armor doesn't have that many. One at a time, Ryan shrugged it off. What is this? Pluto asked, curious. Some toy. It's quite cute, Ki-young said. A toy with enough firepower to wipe out a small city, Vulcan said, more and more fascinated by the plushie's dark power. Can I? No, the courier denied her. But. No. Ryan said firmly. I'm not loaning it. A-bombs, fine, but something this dangerous? No way in hell. It couldn't end in anything but tragedy. Vulcan looked deeply disappointed, but didn't push the issue. It's exceptionally lethal, she told Pluto, putting the plushie back on the weapon pile. But it doesn't cause memory alteration. None of his weapons can do that. Neither can his power, Cancel said. Or at least I don't think so. He's as violent as they come. Oh, you're a white? Ryan asked, the girl nodding. One of the mightiest. Pluto smiled at Ryan. Cancel can negate the powers of everyone within a certain radius. My brother accepted, of course. Ah, that's funny. Cancel immediately pouted. Why don't you check for yourself then, huh? Challenge accepted. Ryan immediately attempted to stop time, and nothing happened. No feedback, no world freezing with the power of his mind, not even an itching sensation. Nothing at all. His ability simply refused to activate. He tried again, but he kept having performance issues. His annoyance must have shown on his face because a smug, victorious smile appeared at the edge of Greta's lips. Well, that wasn't good. That wasn't good at all. His save point shouldn't be affected, but if Cancel negated the automatic trigger, then if Ryan perished close to her, he might die for good. Miss Pluto, have I told you I find you extraordinarily elegant and beautiful? Ryan said. When in doubt, flatter them. Pointless, but thank you, Pluto replied with false affability, before turning to Cancel. Still nothing. If it was memory manipulation, I should have purged the effect, the girl replied. Whether it was blue, green, yellow, or even violet. Pluto said nothing. Instead, she looked for a pocket inside her dress and grabbed a smoke. Sparrow brought a lighter and set it ablaze just as her mistress put the cancer stick in her mouth. I control death, Pluto told Ryan, Jamie's group freezing still at her words. The metaphysical concept of death, the end of life. While I cannot count them, I can sense the weight of a person's years. And if I'm not mistaken, quick save, you're the oldest person I've ever met. Far older than anyone should be. Now that I've taken a good long look at you, I would peg you as. She breathed a cloud of smoke on Ryan's face. Somewhere in the triple digits, and closer to 4 than 2. Oh my, that long? Ryan had lost count after the first century. 3 digits. Ki-young frowned. That doesn't make sense. He seems a bit young for an old geezer, Lunkar replied with a shrug. Are you sure, boss? I don't mean to doubt you. You are, Pluto cut her off, as sharp as a blade. She didn't raise her tone, but it silenced all critics. My power is never wrong. So quick save, care to explain this to me? The way she phrased it, Ryan knew that Pluto would either spare or kill him depending on the answer. No choice then. I knew this day would come. Everyone glanced at the courier, who did his best guilty culprit confession impersonation. Okay, I admit it, the courier let out a long sigh. I lied. I lied to you. To everyone. About my power. I suspected as much, Vulcan said, now listening with rapturous attention. I can't imagine how one could stop time and still be able to act. You should evolve in a lightless world, where every item is a deadly projectile. So, you lied about the nature of your power to keep an ace in the hole? Pluto asked, playing with her cancer stick. A sensible thing to do, especially with strangers. I applaud your caution. I guess you aren't as stupid as you look, Lanka teased him, Jamie elbowing her. How does it actually work then? Pluto asked. When I freeze time, I actually jump into another parallel universe, usually to avoid death, Ryan lied through his teeth. One alternate world very close to mine. I overlap with the me of that world and we become one. Ryan expected denial, but much to his surprise, nothing of the sort came up. That's awesome, Greta all but swooned. Does that mean you can become a woman? Like fuse with an alternate version of you that is a girl? How does it work? Once, I spent 3 months Chinese, Ryan lied, the bigger the better. And I became American, twice. Wait, that's how you cheated at cards. Lanka immediately focused on the important tidbit. You asshole, you jumped universes whenever you had a bad hand. Huh, that's interesting, Jamie said, crossing his arms. That puts some of your comments at the casino in a new light. That explains the chronoradio too, Ki-young added. Chronoradio. Vulcan frowned. A radio that listens through time. Multiple pasts, Ryan corrected. You can't have more than one past, Lanka grunted in the background. A radio that can tap into alternate timelines. The more she observed his technology, the more Vulcan seemed fascinated with it. How does it work? It's really complicated but... I'm a genius, she interrupted Ryan. How does it work? Observer effect, my smug friend, Ryan replied with a shrug, unwilling to elaborate much. The observed state changes depending on the observation method. It works with past events. Vulcan's eyes widened, as she struggled to grasp the underlying theory. Meanwhile, Pluto's face was undecipherable. Finally, she uttered a single word, okay. Wow, you guys took it a lot better than I thought, Ryan admitted. People usually think I'm pulling their legs when I say that. My niece Minerva can interact with parallel universes, although she's a blue. I wonder how your respective abilities would interact. Could be interesting. The underboss examined the courier with a whole new look, trying to puzzle it out. So the abnormal number of years I sense, is because you fuse with your copies and your metaphysical weight accumulates? Could it be that you marked an alternate version of him, Sparrow said. And your power followed him through his jumps? Possible, she admitted. Though the fact I marked him at all is a warning sign. You mark every genome you meet, Vulcan pointed out brashly. It's quite vulgar, frankly. Pluto ignored the jab and observed Ryan closely, who gave her a smile in return. Search his car for any devices, she ordered her cronies next. I'm not entirely convinced yet. Sparrow examined the Plymouth Fury as thoroughly as she checked Ryan's body, searching under the seats, the trunk, and the hidden compartments. She clearly had experience with these things. Vulcan, meanwhile, examined the chronoradio, checking multiple channels. When she opened the car hood and looked inside, Sparrow's bored face turned into one of confusion, then astonishment. My God! What do Ki-young peeked inside, and then screamed in horror. The rat on her shoulder was so startled, it fell to the ground. Jamie immediately rushed to his girlfriend's side, taking her in his arms, and frowning at the car hood. Of course, everyone gathered to peek inside, much to Ryan's confusion. Why such a reaction? Even the unflappable Pluto had raised an eyebrow, and Lanka was at a loss of words. What the fuck? Ryan. Jamie looked at the courier as if he were deranged. Why is there a brain inside your car? Ryan peeked beneath the car hood and understood what they meant. Below the engines and near the heat pump, there was a hidden hatch which Sparrow had opened, revealing an elongated brain floated in a jar of green liquid, the spine linked to cables. Oh, my, Ryan said, scratching his hair. I completely forgot about that. I will ask again. Jamie's voice had turned deadly cold, while Ki-young hid behind her boyfriend. Why do you keep a brain in storage? It's not in storage, it's connected to my car. I mean, how did you think the self-driving worked? The chronoradio? You believed it was magic or artificial intelligence. Seriously, Jamie was okay with Ryan keeping an A-bomb, but he drew the line at a brain-driven car? Where was the logic in that? That's so messed up, Lanka muttered to herself. You abducted a complete stranger and extracted his brain, because you couldn't get a driver's license. Oh, I see where it's going. Ryan raised his hands. You think I abducted homeless people off the streets with the help of a creepy hunchback assistant? And that his name was Igor. It said something about Pluto and Vulcan that they looked more curious than disturbed by the possibility. And Greta kept smiling, fascinated. It should have looked cute, but now it seemed downright disturbing. It's not a human brain, Vulcan pointed out. The shape doesn't fit. It looks like a manta ray's, but, no, I don't recognize it. Some of the parts are clearly artificial. It's homegrown, Ryan replied. Entirely synthetic. Explain this, Pluto said. Now, I worked a few jobs for geniuses in the past, and usually, they paid me with tech rather than cash. Like my A-bomb. He drew quite a few angry glares at this, except Vulcan, who was more and more interested. The courier powered through. I couldn't get the chronoradio to work due to lack of processing power, and I wanted my car to drive by itself. A client proposed to solve both problems at once. By putting a brain in your car. Lanka deadpanned. One of his specialties lied in wetware computers, Ryan replied. He had like, hundreds of brains in jars. He grew them like weed. So it's not sentient? Ki-young asked, looking at the brain matter with an anxious face. It's just a computer. Of course it's not sentient, Ryan protested. You think I would do half the things I do with my car if there was a real person inside? Do you take me for a savage? Nobody answered that. Jamie kept his arms crossed. I don't know how to feel about this. Me neither, his girlfriend admitted. Pluto, who had remained completely unflappable so far, threw her smoke on the lawn and glanced at Vulcan. What do you think? He clearly had multiple geniuses work on his car, and I think I see a miniature particle accelerator connected to the brain, the weapon designer replied, before closing the car hood. It will take me a few days to review everything, but I doubt any of his devices can be used for memory manipulation. I see, Pluto said, turning to Ryan next. Quick save. Yeez. You're on probation for now. I'm not entirely sold yet, but I will give you the benefit of the doubt. Don't make me come back. She glanced at Vulcan next. Jasmine, he's yours to do as you wish. If he fucks up, I'll hold you responsible. Jamie seemed a bit disappointed in the background, perhaps believing she would assign Ryan to his own superior's division. But he knew better than to mouth off to that lethal woman. Without a word nor goodbye, Pluto considered the matter settled and moved towards her car. See you soon. Greta waved at everyone, while she and Sparrow went for the Lamborghini. Crisis averted. No sooner after they left, Vulcan tried to buy Ryan on the spot. Okay, 3,000, she declared out of nowhere, unable to resist her newfound feelings for the courier. To work as my lab assistant, and let me examine your rabbit. Does a toy warrant more attention than a brain-driven car? Ki-young whispered to Jamie, who shrugged his shoulders. He had long stopped trying to make sense out of the situation. $3 per month. Ryan smiled smugly at this cute offer. My, you're cheap. Per day, Vulcan corrected the courier. Half cash, half wired. Ryan merely raised an eyebrow. Lanka was the one who almost died of a stroke on the spot. Per day. For him. He cheats at cards. I will make you your own armor, everything else you want, Vulcan continued, completely ignoring the minion. Drugs, enough whores to break your nuts on, your own personal lab? And of course, your girl. You grease the hinges, the door opens, Ryan replied. My main quest first, then we'll see about the side quests. All right, fair, Vulcan replied, moving towards her armor. We're going to the Muavun. To your friend, Vulcan replied as if he was saying something stupid. There's a second seat in my suit's cockpit, so climb in. Finally. He was going to see Len at long last. When Vulcan said she had a second spot in her cockpit, Ryan thought he would have his own baby seat at the back. But as it turned out, the genius was more fond of motorcycle designs than cars. People are gonna talk, Ryan said, holding Vulcan by the waist with his chest against her back as the mech accelerated. The crazy woman had designed her cockpit like a motorbike, with screens and computer interfaces at the front. The bench seat did allow for 2 people inside, but Ryan had to lean on the pilot due to a lack of space. If outsiders could watch them, they would probably find their current position suspicious. "Let them," Vulcan replied. Due to the oceanic pressure, the mech had entered some sort of alternate mode to protect its weaker parts, contracting its joints, shielding the cameras, and using only sonars and thermal sensors for navigation. From outside, the armor must have looked like a bulky lump of metal. "I don't give a shit." "Interesting choice of design though," Ryan said, hearing the faint noise of the fusion reaction powering the suit. "Was that a personal preference or?" "Dyname's elite soldiers are trained to target the center of mass," Vulcan cut him off. Ryan had noticed that she was very fond of lording over her knowledge whenever the occasion presented itself. Since most armor cockpits are located there, this means enemies usually shoot straight at your vitals in a fight. "I used to overcompensate for that with thicker shielding, but that's pretty limited when you fight someone who can bench press tanks." "Ah, I get it," Ryan realized, as he felt the mech slow down. "With your current design, the cockpit is actually located between the shoulders, thus away from the area where most soldiers shoot at. This improves the chances of successful ejection in a pinch, but you must also cut down cockpit space to avoid making the frame unwieldy." "I use a neural interface to control most of the systems," she replied, briefly putting a hand in her hair. Ryan noticed some kind of black cranial implant hidden below her bun. "This removes the need for systems in the cockpit, except emergency ones." "Oh, so that explained how she could command her suit from afar." Ryan wondered about her range. "I suppose it's an even trade in exchange for the close, uncomfortable physical proximity. If you use your hands to feel me up, I'll castrate you," she warned him. "I can already feel your cock in my back." "Gee, when you said you were easy, you weren't kidding. You don't want me to upgrade the difficulty to hard mode right now?" Vulcan chuckled at the dirty wordplay. Ryan couldn't believe it, but the violent genius was quite lovely when nobody threatened her fragile ego. "You're fucking shameless," she said. "And here I thought you loved that girl though." "I loved her once, yes," Ryan admitted. "But that was a long time ago." Well, his devotion to Len had never wavered through the years, but Ryan no longer desired her romantically. He had been in romantic relationships in the past, all erased by time. At this point, the courier could settle for a friend, even an acquaintance who could recognize him. Someone with whom he could have a connection that would survive his endless travels across time, no matter how fragile. All Ryan wanted was someone who could alleviate his loneliness. No more, no less. The courier sighed. Moving kilometers below the sea gave him the blues. "Are we there yet? Are you going to ask this every minute?" "Yes, until we are there. If you ask it again, you can say goodbye to another A place," she replied. "Are you coming on to me?" The genius ignored him, the mech shaking. Ryan guessed that they must have landed somewhere. "Are we," he started, Vulcan glaring at him over her shoulder, "friends yet?" "You must have a death wish," the genius said, the cockpit ceiling shifting. "And as a matter of fact, we're here. About time." A hatch opened above the courier, alongside a mini ladder. Ryan could see a red lamp outside the metal suit, enshrined inside a rusted ceiling, but little else. "I'll be waiting here, working on other stuff," Vulcan said, as Ryan started climbing out of the cockpit. "Since you guys need some time alone. Just don't take too long, or I'll leave without you. You would leave a major investment stranded miles below the sea." Ryan mused, before nodding at the genius. "Thanks. You did your job, I did mine. I ain't a fink, Ryan." "Well, I certainly appreciate a woman of her word." It saddened Ryan a little since he might bypass all these fetch quests in the future, depending on how things turned out now. He would have to find a way to balance the scales. The courier climbed out of the mech, standing atop the suit. The room looked like an airlock, albeit one big enough to house something as large as Vulcan's suit. Walls of steel surrounded Ryan, thick enough to withstand the undersea pressure outside. Vulcan's machine stood with its boots in a puddle of water, enormous closed gates at the back, a smaller human-sized door at the front. While a lamp provided a dim crimson light, Ryan didn't notice any camera. "Sure do?" he asked, before leaping off the mech and onto the puddle. When he received no answer, he moved towards the smaller door. No sooner did he approach it, that he heard a sound coming from behind. The gate opened on its own, spurred on by an automatic mechanism. Carefully, Ryan stepped out of the undersea airlock, and into an apartment. Well, it looked like an apartment, albeit one sparsely furnished. It was around 50 meters square, including a main resting room, a small kitchen, and doors leading to what Ryan assumed to be a bedroom and bathroom. The walls were painted blue and red, her favorite colors. The whole place smelled of her presence. "Where's that Jamaican crap to sing a song when you need him?" Ryan whistled to himself, finding this place too silent for his liking. Yet he didn't see any stereo nearby. The courier moved towards the kitchen, noticing a fridge. When he opened it, Ryan found an assortment of tasty dishes straight from the sea: crabs, fishes, algae. A tube seemed to provide the food from another part of the complex. The courier tested the sink next. It worked perfectly, but clearly hadn't been used much lately. "Shorty, where are you?" Ryan then wandered towards the main resting room, made of a sofa and a plastic table. Instead of a TV, the main room sofa faced a massive porthole allowing sitters to see the world outside, namely, an undersea abyss as dark as the blackest night. Strange fish looked on the other side of the reinforced glass, perhaps curious or attracted by the strange house's warmth. The courier noticed a pile of books on the table, including Vinck Mil Sous les Mers, the exact same book Len found in Venezia all those years before, alongside Karl Marx's compiled Das Kapital, and Hegel's Elements of the Philosophy of Right. Some things never changed. However, much to his alarm, the courier also noticed a large amount of medications next to that mini library. Ryan quickly analyzed them, identifying the products as Dynamese-made antidepressants and anxiolytics. Powerful ones too. Ryan didn't know Len's self-medication treatment details, but it was clearly unhealthy. As the courier walked in front of the porthole and peeked through, he noticed other sources of light in the darkness. On a closer look, they came from other portholes in sphere-shaped structures, an egg nest at the very bottom of the abyss. A complex set of corridors linked the structures together, forming a vast community. Did Len build that? Certainly not in 6 months, even with Vulcan's help and funding. She must have spent at least a year slowly building this place, going to New Rome when she needed specific technology she couldn't manufacture herself. If each habitat was a self-sufficient apartment, then there was enough space to house hundreds of people. Silly Len, she was building her own undersea Khrushchevka. But still, this place felt like it lacked a soul. There was no personal touch, no warmth to it. All the accommodations were utilitarian, meant to cover a human being's basic needs without any aestheticism whatsoever. Besides the books, Ryan didn't notice any source of entertainment or even a photo. This place was a brightly colored undersea tomb, nothing more. He heard another door open behind him, perhaps the bedroom's one. She didn't make a sound at first, yet he could sense her eyes peering at his back. She didn't dare say anything, so Ryan broke the ice. "Hi Shorty," the courier said, looking over his shoulder. "It's been way too long." It was her. She was both so familiar, and yet so different. But it was her, unmistakably her. She wore a brown diving suit, albeit not the towering armor as in the last loop, alongside some kind of water rifle. Len had had a growth spurt since the 4 years they last met, although she was still small enough for him to tease her. Her teenage cuteness had blossomed into a true beauty, albeit one lessened by exhaustion and the pale complexion of her skin. She clearly didn't go out often enough. They both needed to take a vacation. "Riri," Len smiled, but it was more sadness than joy. Her voice was music to Ryan's ears, yet she sounded so weak and anxious. It had been so long since he had heard that nickname, that the courier had almost forgotten it. It awakened old emotions he had long since buried through decades of time looping. Happiness, and sadness too. She looked so terrible, her eyes blackened by tiredness and antidepressants, that it made Ryan feel guilty not to have found her before. It was his job to make her happy, and she clearly wasn't. Ryan fully turned around to hug his oldest friend, but she took a step back when she saw him move from his spot. He froze in place, confused, while the sofa stood between them like an insurmountable barrier. Don't come closer," Len pleaded, a hand on her water rifle. She wasn't pointing it at him, but she didn't set it aside either. "Please." "Shorty, what's wrong?" Ryan asked. This wasn't the reception he had hoped for, let alone expected. It's me. I've been looking everywhere for you. I know, she replied. I know. Ryan tensed up at these words. For how long? His best friend looked away, before finally confessing, 2 years. Ryan froze, as his reality came crashing down. He had always refused to entertain the thought, even if deep down, he knew it was the only logical explanation. Ryan had made so many waves across Italy, he thought that if Len was alive, then she would have contacted him. If she didn't, he believed it meant that she was dead, captured, or in a terrible position. Ryan never wanted to accept the most likely scenario. Namely, that she avoided him on purpose. Why? Ryan asked, feeling as if he had been shot in the gut. Why? Why did you avoid me? She didn't answer immediately, not with her voice, but her body spoke for her. Her trembling hands, her unease in Ryan's presence. The courier couldn't believe it. You're afraid of me? No, she said. It's just, your presence. You have PTSD, Ryan recognized the symptoms, glancing at the pile of medications. Suddenly, it all started to make sense. I remind you of the bad days. I remind you of bloodstream. I'm an open wound. Riri, your power, Len shook her head, it's done something to your mind. I can see it. You're not stable. Your behavior, it's not that of a sane person. Len, I'm not insane, Ryan protested. I just get the joke. You don't get anything, she accused the courier. You never did. You killed him. The words echoed across the undersea habitat, an awkward silence settling in. You led the carnival to us, Len accused him. You didn't pull the trigger, but you brought the gun. I did, Ryan admitted. He had an eternity to ponder his choice. And it had to be done. My only regret is that it separated us for years. More silence. Len had never been good at articulating her feelings, but all these years had only worsened her social skills. He wondered if she had any people to talk to. Len, the courier said. Your father was never going to get better, and one day, he would have killed you. He almost did. I spent years studying the nature of genomes, trying to find a solution to the psycho condition, see if I could have made it right. But there is no cure. Or at least none I could design with the means at hand. Even Ryan, for all his power over time and causality, hadn't dared take 2 elixirs, for powers worked on a level far greater than mere gene manipulation. Another elixir would cause his original power to mutate, maybe create another save point or permanently leave him mad. If Ryan ever became a psycho like Bloodstream, with his save point, no one would be able to stop him. It would be an unending nightmare, for himself and countless others. I know, Len admitted. I know. But he was still my dad. That wasn't your choice to make. Ryan put his hands behind his back, studying her for a moment. Then, he removed his hat and mask, so she could see his true face. The gnawing unhappiness beneath the smile. I apologize, Ryan said, and he meant it. I'm sorry I hurt you. Len looked into his eyes, and then glanced away, unable to hold his gaze. The sight hurt way worse than acid rain's knives. He bore witness to the end of his main quest, and it wasn't a happy ending. Why did you make this place? Ryan asked, glancing at the habitat. Perhaps there was something he had overlooked, a detail that could let him salvage their friendship. For me, she said. Then for others. The orphans above, Ryan guessed. That's what this place is for. Yes, she said, looking at the distant lights through the porthole. I want to bring them here when it's finished. Give them a place where they can belong, begin again. Make it right. Len, you can't retreat from the world, even if it's harsh and absurd, Ryan said. Or else you will lose part of yourself too. Look at you, you're miserable, Len. You're not happy living like this. Riri, there's nothing above for them, or for me, Len argued. There's just violence and psychos and powerful bastards kicking down the little guy. I thought the bombs had wiped the slate clean, but more than a decade afterward, it's more of the same. If that's how you feel, then let's make it better, Ryan said. I can help. I've got all the time in the universe to fix it. I can make everything right. I'm already fixing it. I'm making a new, better place. A place where everyone is equal. No, you're running away from your problems, just as I did, Ryan argued. The medications are dulling the pain, but they won't make it go away. No matter how many times you repeat the same process, the outcome won't change. Neither will this place help you. It's sunken. You're literally sinking, Len. He extended a hand. Let me help you, the courier asked her, begged her. Once, you wanted to explore the world. We can do it. Travel together, and look beyond the horizon. There's still so much to do, so much to learn. I've seen things you can't even imagine. I can show them to you. We can start over. Len looked at his fingers, and for long, agonizing seconds, she looked tempted to take his hand. If only she would, then their days of loneliness would finally end. But she didn't take it, held back by her own fears. Crushed at the sight, Ryan realized it wouldn't do. She was too hurt, too wounded, to take the risk. Their friendship was an old wound she feared might fester again, and sink her deeper below the sea. He was just making things worse. The world is absurd, Ryan declared. But it's not hopeless. She frowned at him, confused. I've faced the same situation over 10,000 iterations, and made a different choice each time, he explained. If it was all hopeless, then nothing should have changed. A single man can't make any difference, right? That's fatalism for you. Well, fatalists are cowardly crybabies. Every choice I made led to a different outcome. Sometimes it changed little, other times, it changed everything. Sometimes, I killed people, and other times, I saved them. Where? I don't understand, where are you getting at? That in the end, my decisions changed things, Ryan said. Even if I was the only one who could see it. It doesn't matter if the change is big or small. The change exists. Yes, bad things often happen for no reason, and sometimes good things too. While not guaranteed, justice is attainable. Nobody is in control of anything, but that doesn't mean your actions have no impact. So please, Len, don't ever say it's hopeless. If time travel has taught me anything, it's that everything can change, and the perfect ending is always within reach. Time travel. Instead of burdening her with his own issues, Ryan put the quick-save mask and hat back on, then walked towards the hatch's door. She didn't make a move to stop him. Even if she seemed to hesitate. No matter how bad it gets, Len, I won't give up on finding happiness, he said, looking over his shoulder at his old friend. I hope you don't either. Ryan walked away, his silent steps echoing below the sea. It was a bright new day in New Rome. The sun was rising. Bullets were flying. Rats were singing. Standing at the balcony of Jamie's apartment in casual clothes, a coffee mug in his right hand, Ryan glanced at the rodents occupying the area. Ki-young's rat seemed to be doing some stretching exercises while dawn rose beyond the horizon, showing incredible levels of flexibility. They were cute, for enormous mutant rodents. But Ryan was a cat person at heart, and he was in a foul mood. He grabbed his cell phone with his left hand and played pre-recorded music he had prepared just for the occasion. The terrible noise of felines meowing echoed across the apartment, startling the rats and sending them into a frenzied panic. They immediately dispersed, hiding beneath the sofa. Ryan! Ki-young shouted from the kitchen, busy making breakfast. Stop it! What? He asked innocently, the rats glancing at Ryan upon realizing his trick. It's not forbidden to listen to cat music. I'm not forbidden to throw you off the balcony either. What is all the racket? Jamie emerged from his bedroom, wearing only a shirt and boxers. Without his armor, he reminded Ryan of a grizzly bear emerging from his cave. The first thing the mob enforcer did was to kiss his girlfriend, then join the courier at the balcony with a coffee cup of his own. Nothing, Ryan replied, hiding his cell phone. Ki-young's rats emerged from their hiding spots to gather behind his back, glaring at him. Seeing a dozen rats in that position may have frightened a normal person, but the courier just meowed at them. You're impossible, Jamie replied, his eyes blinked as he slowly woke up. A rat jumped on the balcony's ramp, the genome scratching it between the ears. How are you feeling? Whimsically peachy. Ryan, Jamie looked at him in the eye, how do you really feel? Was he that bad at hiding it? Ryan looked at the distant, warming Sunday. I don't feel anything. Anything as in. Nothing, Ryan replied with a sigh. I feel empty. Well, to be precise, he felt like someone whose years-long quest had ended disastrously. Ryan had expected a happy reunion that would make everything better, and he had only found more tears and sadness. Emptiness had been his natural state for years, until learning of Len's survival had given him a newfound direction. His endless existence finally had a purpose. Except Len didn't want Ryan in her life. Hell, she was an even bigger wreck than he was. But I'm used to it, the courier replied with optimism. That just means I've just got to find something to fill the void. Even that stunt with the rats was an attempt to get his mind off Len. He had found chaos and whimsical jokes a welcome distraction when in a bad mood. Confusion energized him, while introspection made him feel stale and restless. Jamie shook his head, before looking at the sunlight too. I'm sorry. About what? About your girl. I'm sorry she broke your heart. I haven't been dumped, Ryan protested since he clearly had misunderstood the situation. I know rejection is painful, Zanbedo consoled him, digging himself deeper. And that's okay. It happens to everyone. She wasn't the right person for you, or perhaps now was not the right moment. You're still young, you will find someone. For empty platitudes, Jamie managed to make them sound inspired. Maybe because he earnestly tried to cheer him up. The worst part is, Ryan said, letting out some frustration instead of bottling it up, she's in pain, and I don't know how to help yet. His words seemed to resonate with Jamie, who opened his mouth without saying anything, seemingly rehearsing his words in his head. He glanced at the rats and told them to shoo away. The rodents let out a vengeful screech at Ryan and then moved to the kitchen. You know, one day, a former friend and I found someone having an overdose. A homeless woman. Jamie spoke once the rats out of earshot, his voice breaking. She would have died if we hadn't been there. Ryan could sense the sheer emotion brimming in Jamie's voice, and said nothing. It clearly came from the heart. Even when she was out of the hospital, I considered her my responsibility. I tried to help her clean herself up. It was hard. It was really hard. It took months to deal with the relapses, the bad habits, and help her find a job. A lot of my friends, they didn't understand. They thought I was just wasting my time. That she was hopeless. But she wasn't. It worked out. It was hard, but she recovered. Ryan glanced at the kitchen and Ki-young's shadow. People take time to heal, Jamie said. And from what I heard, that girl seems to have pretty deep scars. Don't give up and do your best, but don't beat yourself over it either. Ryan nodded but didn't respond. I talked with the others, Jamie said, swallowing his coffee without savoring it the way Ryan did, and we will organize a party next Thursday at the house. To welcome you in New Rome. A Hugh Hefner party, or a friendly housewarming party. Genome only, most of whom are single. Hugh Hefner then. Wait, are you going to whore me out? Am I to pay the rent in my flesh and blood? Don't worry about rent. However, everything that will happen during the party will stay at the party. You may see, weird stuff. The more Jamie spoke, the more embarrassed he sounded. Stuff that would shock most people. I think you're pretty open-minded, but I'm not sure how much. Since genomes were naturally immune to most diseases, including STDs, and had a high drug threshold, Ryan had a pretty good idea of how the party would degenerate. Oh, you know, without arrogance, the courier smiled, I've seen everything. Okay, good. No bliss or cats allowed, and you help clean up tomorrow morning, Jamie added firmly. Also, no matter what happens, don't fuck Vamp. You can hook up with anyone, but her. A forbidden romance route? How can I resist? By reminding yourself that she's a goddamn succubus who will drain you to death if you fall into her arms, Jamie said, with a hint of dislike. She's a nasty shade of green. Why invite her at all if you don't like her? She's part of the hit squad, and she takes it personally when she isn't invited to group events. Trust me, it's less drama that way. And Livia? Ki-young shouted from inside the apartment. Don't forget to tell him about Livia. And Livia too, thank you, honey. Jamie shouted back, before focusing on Ryan. She's off limits for a reason I cannot divulge yet, but trust me. If you make a move on her, you will die. Jamie didn't know anything about reverse psychology, did he? Nah, the courier wasn't in the mood. I think I will pass on the matchmaking attempt, Ryan said, bored with romance. I've had my fair share of hook UPS. Really? Jamie didn't hide his surprise. I didn't take you for a party animal. Or at least, not that kind. At one point in my life, my motto was try them all until you find the perfect one, Ryan explained. But afterward, it became stale and superficial. It was just doing the same thing over and over again. I think I see what you mean. Also, why are you advocating for me to fight for true love, and then try to hook me up with someone else? No, I said, you don't give up on helping your friend with her issues, but if she isn't interested, take the hint and look for companionship elsewhere. Jamie put a hand on Ryan's shoulder, overflowing with warm dad radiations. I know it's a leap of faith, but I'm sure you will find someone that can make you happy at that party. That's all I wish for you. Ryan turned towards the apartment. Ki-young. Yes, she replied, busy making lunch. If you don't marry this man, I will do it myself. I don't share, she replied with a deadpan tone. I told you that you had the same sense of humor, Jamie said, putting a hand on Ryan's shoulder. Both genomes returned to the kitchen, putting their empty cups in the sink. By then, Ki-young had cooked a big brunch for her man and herself. However, she also handed a lunchbox to Ryan. Here, she said. For midday. It's bibimbap, so I hope you like rice and vegetables. It's fine, I was going to grab a sand. Take it, she insisted, all but shoving the lunchbox in Ryan's arms. Knowing Vulcan, she won't let you out of her workshop until she has worked you to the bone. God damn it, these guys were so nice, it was almost oppressive. They were killing him with kindness. His lunchbox under his arm, Ryan prepared to leave for work but stopped in front of Lanka's bedroom first. Sleeping Beauty. The courier knocked. It's the police, wake up. Hands on your head. He heard a groan behind the door, alongside the sound of empty bottles falling to the ground. Is it 3 in the afternoon already? No. Then fuck off. Come to think of it, she remained awake very late into the night. She probably worked evening shifts. After putting on his quick-save costume, Ryan waltzed out of the house, put the lunchbox on the back seat, and then drove the Plymouth Fury away. Even at this early hour, traffic in New Rome was insane, reminding the courier of the worst hours of the pre-war era. Right after leaving the suburbs, he found himself trapped in a jam. The courier opened the windows and put on the radio, singing to himself when he found the Pink Panthers song. Ta-da, ta-da, ta-da ta-da ta-da. Curse Henry Mancini, and his catchy tune. He needed a cheery song, especially after last night. The reunion's disastrous ending had gnawed at him all evening, as he tried to figure out a way to help Len get over her issues. Unfortunately, he saw none yet, or at least none that wouldn't make things worse. Ryan had gained a certain insight into human nature through his loops. His best friend seemed so far gone into her shell, that forcing himself into her life would worsen things. She needed to reach out to others first. But if not him, then whom? The orphans. How did it fit? His main quest had ended in a disaster, and Ryan didn't know what to do next. Well, now that he had somewhat fulfilled his main goal, the courier could devote his time to do side quests instead of starting a new loop. He had promised different people to drive the Meta out of Rust Town and to blow up the Augusti Super Lab, and the courier would be true to his word. Afterward though, he didn't know. Finding Len had been the driving force of his existence lately, a welcome intermission in his meaningless wandering. If he couldn't help her, then... No, he couldn't allow himself to think this way. There was a way to solve this, he just needed time to figure it out. Don't turn around. Ryan turned around in the back seat but saw nothing. The green giant is in the garden, he said. The green giant is in the garden. No answer. You're supposed to say a code, Ryan replied, looking back at the road. What if I were a shapeshifter? You would have blown your cover. Frankly, you should leave the real work to professionals. The orange is in the hen house. See, you're learning. How was your reunion with Len Sabino? The shroud asked, clearly sitting in the back while invisible. The courier wondered if he had waited all morning, just to surprise Ryan as he took off to work. Were you peeping? Ryan sighed. Not all that great, but I handled it like a champ. I am thankful you didn't rat me out once your goal was achieved, Shroud replied, blatantly ignoring the question. That makes me trust you a bit more. Is there an actual reason you want to visit me, or do you just spook people on principle? You wanted me to keep you updated on the meta gang, and you are supposed to report how things are advancing on your side. Shouldn't you already know? Ryan asked, quite certain the invisible jackass had kept him under tight surveillance. I'm in. You have infiltrated the Augusti, but not the right part of the organization, the glass man said. Bacchus leads the drug division, not Vulcan. The road to complete a quest often takes twists and turns, Ryan replied, raising his finger and delivering his wisdom. Sometimes, you must wait for the right opportunity. Like your party. Shroud mused. I will wait longer, but the deal is off without meaningful progress. For an infiltrator he wasn't very subtle about thinly veiled threats. How about our psycho friends? Ryan changed the subject. Did you clean out the trash yet? They have a sensor, warning system, or maybe a seer. Shroud sighed. Whenever I move too close to the junkyard, they send a heavy hitter after me. Neither invisibility nor disguises helped. Alright, so no stealth mission. What else? Hawk. Didn't you deal with him? Ryan asked, remembering his previous message. Yes. More than once. Ryan looked at the streetlight. Regenerators are annoying, aren't they? Yes. Then the invisible jackass dropped the bomb. But not as much as duplicators. Ryan didn't move an inch. I tried to capture him at the orphanage, Shroud explained, but he killed himself rather than become a prisoner. Impossible. The only thing nearly as strong as a psycho's addiction was their survival instinct. Especially old ones like Hawk, who had survived for more than a decade. Unless. You said they sent heavy hitters after you, Ryan guessed. Including him. Including Hawk, whose original remains are still in my possession. Shroud's visor became briefly visible, reflecting the dawn's light. That scenario should remind you of someone else. Bloodstream. Len's father had had an incredibly loathsome cloning power, as ghastly as it was effective. It had made him nigh unbeatable for years until the carnival tracked all his doubles down and managed to prevent him from duplicating. Hawk had seen it in action. Could it have inspired him? If his duplication works the same as Bloodstream. Ryan trailed, his hands clenching on the driving wheel. I'll take it personally. I can't confirm it, Shroud replied. But I thought you should know. If you learn anything new, please inform me. Or I will deliver the pieces, Ryan replied. Anything else? Bacchus, alias Andreas Torque, is a blue, Shroud explained. He can drive others mad with visions and hallucinations, though I do not know what triggers his power. Tread against him carefully. I don't have a lot of information on his person, except that he is an excommunicated priest. He rarely leaves the Super Lab, and only to visit Augustus. If you want to get into the division, you will need to reach him through an intermediary. Great, a new chain quest. I suppose I won't get a reward for it? No answer. The courier turned his head around, touched the back seat with his hand, and sensed nothing. Not even a calling card. Wait. That bastard had stolen the lunchbox.